Well, we continue to follow breaking news this hour. President Trump has paused reciprocal tariffs on most nations for 90 days, but still raised his tax rate on Chinese imports to 125%. I'm Scripps News' Anna Rafferty, and this is On the Scene. Let's go out to the White House, where our reporter Jacob Garden-Schwartz is live for us. And Jacob, we just heard from the Treasury Secretary. What can you tell us about this social media post from the president?
Yeah, certainly market-moving news there that is directly to the contrary of everything we had been told the White House was planning on pursuing over the past several days. I think it's helpful maybe if we start by thinking a little bit about just what has been going on over the past week, let's say, what got us to this moment. As we know, just a little over a week ago, the president announced those reciprocal tariffs on a number of nations throughout the world, a 10% baseline rate on all imports from all countries, as well as those higher rates for countries with whom the United States maintains significant trade imbalances that the White House claims are ripping us off. That put the market in turmoil. We saw continuing declines in the stock market, both here and around the world. Last night, we saw some volatility in the Treasury bond market. Yesterday, I believe it was, one day earlier this week, there were rumors of a 90-day pause, the thing that the president just announced a few moments ago. The White House very quickly shot those down, saying that was not something the president was pursuing, that he was intending to stick firm behind his ideals. Now, here we have it. Just this afternoon, the president announcing that 90-day pause. So what does that mean for these actual tariff rates? Well, we understand all of the sectoral tariffs, things like steel and aluminum, the fentanyl-related tariffs, those are all still in effect. This is just those reciprocal tariffs that the White House recently announced. And basically, that 10% baseline rate for all countries is staying in effect. It's just those higher rates for countries with whom we have trade imbalances. Those are the ones that are going to be paused for 90 days. The reasoning for that pause, the White House says, is so that they can continue negotiations with individual countries to try to lower their tariffs on the U.S. or reduce trade barriers. We understand that some of those countries with whom the U.S. has already entered into negotiations include Vietnam, Japan, South Korea. Of course, these are some countries, our allies who we often collaborate with trying to counter Chinese aggression. That takes us to China. The president not backing down on the China threat, raising the tariff rate there to 125%. Again, escalating this growing trade war with China. The Treasury Secretary just a few moments ago telling us that, in essence, the president was goading China into this, trying to show the rest of the world that China is not backing down and that they should be aligned with the United States in this matter. There are still a number of open questions here. I think first among them, my question that I've tried to get answers to and have not yet, is why is it that we are raising the rates on China, given that they retaliated against us, but not on the European Union? As we've been reporting all day, the EU raised tariff rates against the United States as a result of all of this, and yet their rates were lowered as a part of this pause. Another important question is sort of how exactly the White House made this decision, when it was made, and who, if anybody, got a heads up. I think about this, if this were a private company, if some private business leader has market-moving news and they tell someone else before they actually announce it, that would be insider trading. Of course, this is a little bit of a different situation. As we know, the president is essentially immune from criminal prosecution due to Supreme Court precedent. But certainly, it is possible that other people got a heads up, and as we see the market bouncing back right now, certainly worth tracking down just the exact timing of how this all played out and where we go from here. Andrew?
Yeah, and everything the president does and says has the potential to move the markets, as we've seen this week itself was a great example of that. But throughout this process, we saw some real mixed messaging from those around the president. There seemed to be this team negotiate versus team no negotiate when it came to what the actual impact and purpose of these tariffs was. Was this a sign, essentially, that Scott Bessent, who was probably part of the team negotiate, that he was speaking to reporters today? Was this a sign that that side ultimately won out? Or was this, as the White House kind of alluded to yesterday at the press conference and the daily briefing, the plan all along?
That is a great question, and one, truthfully, that I'm hesitant to speak to too greatly, because we don't know what could be coming down the pipeline in another hour or two. As we've seen, the president can really shift the entirety of U.S. policy by Truth Social post. Certainly, as you alluded to, the fact that it was the Treasury Secretary who has been one of the voices in the administration advocating for negotiations throughout this conversation, that certainly appears that that side is, rising in power currently. On the flip side of things is somebody like Peter Navarro, the White House trade advisor, who we understand has been continuing to advocate for the president to hold firm against these, nations with whom we have trade imbalances. So, my expectation is that we might hear from Navarro later today as well, and it will be interesting to see what his spin, what his reaction to this is. But certainly, as much as the White House might be trying to claim that this was the plan all along, it is just blatantly true that that was not the case. As recently as the other day, when they very directly shot down an online social media rumor that this 90-day pause was coming. So certainly the case that there are competing voices within the administration. The Treasury Secretary, the White House Press Secretary, telling us moments ago that it is ultimately the president who makes the final call. He's the one who chose to pursue this 90-day pause. They claim that's because he has received an inbound of requests to negotiate from more than 75 countries. Remains to be seen exactly how those negotiations play out and where things go from here.
All right, Jacob Gordon-Schwartz at the White House for us. Jacob, we'll let you get back to your reporting and check in with you a little bit later on. Thank you.